Hi, everyone. We're going to start this presentation at 6:05. Hi, everyone. Just a reminder, we're going to start this presentation in a few minutes. All right, it's 6:05 p.m., so let's get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our very first Pruneridge Avenue Complete Streets Plan Community Workshop. My name is Carol Chariot, and I'm the Principal Transportation Planner here with the City of Santa Clara. Next slide. We have about 90 minutes today for the meeting, so if you can't stay the whole time, we'd love for you to stay connected either through the web, phone, or email. Next slide. Here is the agenda for tonight, and agenda items that are in bold are where we want your feedback. And items that we'll be covering tonight are such things as why are we even studying this corridor, what it looks like today, and your vision for the corridor. Next slide. Once again, I'm Carol Chariot, and I'm the project manager for this project. I also have here with me tonight, city staff. I have Michael Liu, our Assistant Public Works Director, Jonathan Yee, our Transportation Manager. And then I also have Alta Planning and Design, who are the consultants who are assisting us with the development of the plan. From Alta, I have Jeff Knowles, Ryan Booth, and Ben Frazier. Next slide. So why are we studying Pruneridge Avenue? Well, it's a high priority project in both the city and county's bicycle plans. In the city's bicycle plan, it's ranked the second highest project within our top 40 projects. We also want to transform Pruneridge Avenue into a complete street, which is a street that provides a safe, comfortable, and convenient for all users of the roadway. In addition, this plan would support the city's recently adopted Complete Streets policy. We also want to achieve the goals of the Climate Action Plan, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So where are we in this plan process? We're at phase 1, which is where we're doing some information gathering. Next, we will develop some roadway concepts where we take into consideration feedback, which we hear from the community at these workshops. Third phase, we'll develop the draft plan. And the fourth and final phase is to take that plan to council for review and consideration. As you can see, there will be multiple opportunities for the community to provide us feedback throughout the duration of this plan. Next slide. So we're at the very beginning of this project. And as you can see, the project will take almost 2 years to complete. We'll have 3 community workshops. Our next community workshop will be in the fall, where we're going to take the roadway concepts to you, where we can gather input. And then a year from now, we'll take the plan back to you again, so you can see and also provide us feedback. And finally, a year from now in the summertime, we'll hope to bring the plan to council for review and consideration. We'll have the council review all the options and decide if and when it will move forward. Next slide. So we really want you to stay involved. And once again, you can reach us through our webpage, our voicemail, or through phone call and through email. And also, I want to point out to you that we just recently released an online survey where it will be open through the end of April. So we would love for you to spread the word and also point folks to this online survey. And so with that, I'd like to move it over to Jeff Knowles. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carol. Again, my name is Jeff Knowles. I'm a principal planner at Alta Planning Design. We're fortunate to be with you tonight. I wish we could be there in person with you, maybe at a school close by on the corridor where we could see each other in person, but COVID is preventing us from doing that. So the next best thing is meeting from the comforts of our own home. I want to go through some housekeeping a little bit about tonight's meeting, including our technology that we're using, and answer any questions before we proceed with our Q&A sessions and our polling. So the first thing is how to use Zoom. When participating, please rename yourself on the Participants tab with your first name and maybe the last initial. It's okay. It's optional, but it helps us just to track comments as they come up. You can also type questions and comments in the Q&A window. And eventually we're going to have some Q&A sessions where we'll ask you to raise your hand to speak if you'd like to unmute. Well, at that point, we'll unmute you. If you don't know where the participants button is, it's at the very bottom. You can click participants, and that's where you can find the raise hand feature, also the Q&A feature as well. At any point in the conversation, you can ask a question. City staff and Alta staff will be standing by to answer those, flag those, and we'll respond to as many as we can get to in our 2 Q&A sessions. Again, when we get to the Q&A sessions, you'll click raise hand if you'd like to speak. The second piece of technology we're using tonight is a feature called PollEverywhere. We're asking you at this point now to go to a web browser and access pollev.com/altaplanning107. We're going to drop that link in the chat window. Keep this page open. We'll be turning on new polls throughout the presentation, and you'll be able to see them in real time as we put those up. I want to make a note that it has some compatibility issues with Internet Explorer as that's being phased out by Microsoft. It works very well for Microsoft Edge, Chrome, or Firefox. Now, there's an alternative as well. If you want to use just your cell phone to engage with us through some of the polling, you can text the word AltaPlanning107 to the number 22333. Again, text the word, all one word, AltaPlanning107, as it's spelled on the screen, to the number 22333. Not all the poll features will work on our phone, but it's another alternative if you don't want to open up a web browser. If at any point you hit a button that takes you away from the poll, you can hit the bottom of the page on the mobile or the top of the page on the desktop of the history of the page. And that way you can hit home, which will re-enter the AltaPlanning107 code, and that'll bring you back. So if you travel away from it accidentally, go back to the PollEv.com, AltaPlanning107, and click home. You may need to re-enter the code AltaPlanning107. This is what it should look like when you access PollEv.com from a web browser on your home computer or a web browser on your phone. If this is your first time using PollEverywhere, you'll be promoted to create a screen name, like your first name and last initial. You can also skip that step. You will then be taken to a landing page. This page will be updated with polls throughout the presentation. You don't need to click anything to advance, only when we have those polls live. This information will be useful for us as we're gathering lots of information, make it really interactive. We've got about 8 or 9 poll questions throughout the process of this meeting. So let's get started with our first poll. So can you access the poll everywhere? If the answer is yes, A. If you're really proud, I did it. B. If you need help, click C. We'll keep it open for a few more minutes. Right now I'm seeing 86 people participating in this webinar, and we've received 36 results. In a few minutes, we're going to take a pause, answer your questions about the technology. So if you're really frustrating right now or can't get it to work, just hang tight and we'll see if we can troubleshoot. If at any point the technology is just not working for you, you can also just make note of your answers and email us. That email information has been listed in the chat window. We could always record your information that way. So let's not let technology be a barrier for your participation. Okay, I'm going to close this one and move on to the next test poll, our very first one. We want to get a sense of who's in the room with us, the virtual room. So where do you live? If the answer is A, on or within a few blocks of Pruneridge Avenue, B, a different area but still within the city, C, a neighboring city, or D, somewhere else? Go ahead and answer now. A, on or within a few blocks, B, a different area within the city, C, a neighboring city, or D, somewhere else. Great. Wonderful to see so many people here that are directly living on or really within a few blocks of Pruneridge Avenue. That's wonderful. All right. This is our last poll before we take a break and answer some Q&A about the technology. How did you hear about tonight's meeting? Let us know. Did you receive a postcard? Did you receive a City of Santa Clara email, social media ad? Other social media ad from maybe a different organization or from a neighbor? Sorry, an email from City of Santa Clara from a newsletter, D, or other method, E. We're asking this question because we want to improve the way that we let people know about this important meeting. So the city sent out over 8,000 different postcards to everybody that lives within a half a mile of the corridor. We want to make sure that that's getting in your hands and helping you find your way to the meeting tonight. The city's also done a concerted effort getting the word out through social media and through emails. So if there's other ways that you think would be helpful in getting the word out, please send us an email and let us know. We're open to ideas about how we can improve the outreach methods. Okay, this is great. Thanks everybody for participating. Okay, at this point, we're going to take a quick pause and answer any questions you have on using Zoom or PollEverywhere. So if you've got a question, you can drop it in the Q&A box. We're also going to answer some questions live. Ryan, I think your audio's having an issue.
I'll read the questions for Ryan.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, sure. So the first question, there's just a technology question about the logistics of Zoom and how to use the Q&A or raise hand. The participants don't see a participant tool on the bottom, so that's okay. We do have your name from when you registered, so that's okay. We see everybody's names. And then if you can just remind everybody, Jeff, about how we're going to be doing the Q&A, and that there is no raise hand function, but at the end, maybe you can talk about our Q&A session at the end and people will be able to talk then.
Right, yeah. So I should be clear, there's a Q&A that's always open right now. If you click the Q&A window, you can ask your questions there about the project, the process, the timeline, what we're doing. Those are being answered, some of them in real time. Some of those I'll be able to read aloud when we get to our second Q&A session. If you'd like to speak at our second Q&A session, we will activate a raise hand function at that time. So right now it's deactivated, and when we get there, we'll open that up, and then we'll just take people in turn, and we'll try and get through as many people speaking as we can as we have time for. Great, I hope that answered questions about okay, looks like John M. has got a question about PollEverywhere. It's not working for him. Maybe Ben can take that one. All right, thanks everybody. All right, let's move forward. So I got an important question tonight. It's not Father's Day, but I think a lot of people think that this project might be somewhat of a dad. Does anybody know this acronym before, DAD? When you think of a dad, you might think of a gentleman like this. No? Well, this is my dad. This is Steve Knowles. Hi, Dad. He's making a cameo appearance tonight. This is my dad, but there's also another acronym that people think of for governments using DAD, like DAD, decide. This is when a government has already made a decision. Then they come together and they announce that they've made this decision without having a whole lot of community input. And then they hold a public meeting to defend their action, right? A DAD. So I'm just make it clear that this is not, the Pruneridge Avenue Community is not a DAD. It's not a DAD because nothing has been decided about the future of this street. I have no announcements to make tonight other than that we're kicking off the study and we're excited to have you here. And there's nothing to defend because I said no decisions have been made. We're at the very, very beginning of this planning process. So I hope through our actions and our transparency, we can continue to show that nothing has been decided. In fact, that's the purpose of this project, is to collect a lot of community input, data analysis, and bring it back to you at multiple points to get your input into the process. So why are we here? The city's received some grant funding from Caltrans to conduct a transportation study focused on ways to improve bicycle and pedestrian connections on Pruneridge Avenue. The plan will also look at ways to improve the comfort and safety of drivers and local residents. The plan will collect data and conduct traffic, parking, and collision analysis on the corridor. The plan will seek and record community input at multiple points in the process and share that feedback directly with City Council. Community input and data will inform conceptual roadway designs. City Council will consider options and choose to move forward or not. No funding has been identified for any future phases beyond this plan. There were not any money for an additional engineering design. There's not funding for any construction at this point. So how do we get there through this plan? We're considering a complete streets approach. Complete streets aim to promote the following couple goals: safety, providing multiple modes of transportation, promoting physical activity by giving people more options for walking and bicycling, cleaner air, and a more comfortable, inviting corridor. Complete streets are streets for everyone, no matter who they are or how they choose to travel. Complete streets provide convenient, comfortable, and connected transportation choices. It's also important to understand the context and the community character where they're located. This is essential in designing facilities that everybody enjoys. There's been a lot of discussion about bicycle lanes as one of the options as part of the study. If bike lanes are to be installed, we'd have to consider removing one travel lane in each direction and installing a center turn lane, or looking at removing parking on one or both sides of the street. Recommendations will be based on public input and traffic analysis. How will decisions be made? This plan will present to Council community input that we receive, technical analysis that we conduct, looking at traffic, parking, simulation modeling about the impacts of any decisions that we made, corridor improvements that will meet the goals of the plan. As I mentioned before, City Council will decide if and how the plan moves forward. There's no funding dedicated to design or build any options right now. So I just want to go over the study area real quick, and then we'll get into some polling. Pruneridge Avenue, the roadway characteristics, is 3 miles of our study area. It's between Pomeroy, right near the edge of the city of Cupertino, to Winchester Boulevard, near it's the city boundary with the city of San Jose. It's a 3 to 4 lane roadway, and it has neighboring city connections at West Heading in San Jose and Apple Park in Cupertino. Diving a little closer in, this is the study area, again, as I mentioned, from Pomeroy all the way to the eastern city limit at Winchester Boulevard. West of Pomeroy Avenue in the cities of Santa Clara and Cupertino, there was what's called a road diet that went in 2012. This took 2 lanes of traffic in each direction and converted it to 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. It retained parking and striped bicycle lanes with additional space that was created. East of Winchester Boulevard in the city of San Jose, a similar road diet design was implemented in 2017. It retained parking and used created bicycle lanes with excess space. A little history. In 2012, as I mentioned before, that was when the roadway was reconfigured, shown on the prior slide. In 2018, a new traffic signal at Pruneridge and Cronin was installed. And upcoming in 2021, this year, bike improvements at Pruneridge and Lawrence Expressway intersection will be constructed. So we're going to ask a series of poll questions about your vision, and then we're going to get into the Q&A where we'll be able to spend most of our time hearing from you, answering your questions, and engaging. So the first poll question: what 1 or 2 words come to mind when you think of Pruneridge Avenue today? And again, you can type these words all together. You can type one and then the other. The PollEverywhere will know them together. So what 1 or 2 words come to mind when you close your eyes and think of Pruneridge Avenue today? The software is creating a word cloud. Words that come up more often, if lots of people are putting in the word busy or traffic, you're going to see that word appear larger. This is collecting every word that's coming in and creating this word cloud. And so we're going to keep gathering results. But what I'm hearing right now or seeing, traffic and busy are coming up pretty clear. Unsafe. Somebody said unfriendly. Collisions. Collisions coming up. Noise. I see noise in there. Somebody put essential. I'll give it a few more minutes just to make sure everybody has a chance to engage. I think for the folks that are on the call tonight joining us, traffic, busy, fast, and unsafe are the words that are coming to mind for a lot of people here. And it may not be for everybody, but that's kind of what we're seeing here tonight. All right, I'm going to go to the next poll question. Where do you go using Pruneridge? For you, is it a way that you go to work, to the park, to schools, to go shopping? Do you use it to walk the dog? So you're really just going in a circle and coming back home? All right, this is great. We're seeing people use it to go to the library, to go shopping, to get on Lawrence Expressway. For a lot of you, it's home. To restaurants, to get to downtown. To get to 280, 880. Home is still the clear identifier, and that makes sense for the folks that are in the room. We have so many people here that live on or within a few blocks of Pruneridge. It's probably part of your daily, every day, your trips may involve getting on Pruneridge. All right, let's go to the next one. Thanks, everybody. What 1, 2, or 3 words come to mind when you think of your vision for the future of Pruneridge? This could be things that you want to see changed, things that you want to hold dear and preserve. What is important for us to know about your vision for the future of Pruneridge? So we said peaceful, greenery, bike lanes, traffic. I think there's a calmer traffic, residential, safe. That's coming up pretty clear. People want Pruneridge to be safe street. Unchanged. This is great input. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go to the next poll. What should Pruneridge's priorities be? And we're asking you to rank them. And there may be others. And so if your top priority is not here, send us an email. But we want to know, what are your priorities in ranked order? These are in no particular order that I'm presenting them. Preserving on-street parking, calming or slowing down traffic speeds, improving the walking environment or walking conditions, improving bicycling options, or reducing traffic congestion. So of these options, where should this plan really put its focus? And again, if we missed anything, we're inviting you to send us an email. This requires a little bit more time to respond, so I'm going to give folks more time to answer this one. Right now, calming and slowing down traffic speeds is key. In second place, improving bicycling options, reducing traffic congestion, improving walking conditions, and preserving on-street parking. Great. I'm going to give everybody just another 20 seconds to complete this exercise. Since we're at the very, very beginning of this process, there are no priorities yet in the plan. And so this input will be helpful in coming up with some of the analysis that we do to answer some of these priorities and come up with designs that we can bring back to you to show how well we do in coming up with options for the community to respond to. Great. All right. Next, moving on. We're going to be looking at parking, at the traffic flow, the congestion, looking at counts today and comparing them to the past. We'll be looking at parking options, the walking conditions that are out there right now. We'll be doing a lot of that information. Are there other aspects of the corridor that you are most interested in seeing us study and bring that data back to you? Somebody asked diversion. So if something happens on Pruneridge, will there be diversion of traffic into the side streets? That's important. We'll be looking at that. We're not just looking at traffic flow on the corridor. We'll be conducting dozens of traffic counts all throughout the neighborhoods and the streets surrounding Pruneridge Avenue. Traffic, yep, we'll be looking at a lot of different aspects of traffic. At intersections, how long people have to wait at the current lights, and what that would mean if any designs were changed on the corridor. We'll be able to model that and bring that back to you. Queue lengths, how long are people waiting to make a left turn at different intersections? How long does it take to travel the corridor today, pre-COVID, and what would happen if new designs went in? All that will be factored in and shared. Safety, interesting. Look at where has there been collisions along the corridor? We can propose some safety improvements as part of this plan. So we put noise, pollution, accidents, safety. Comparing to, I see pre-COVID, making sure that we're not just looking at conditions today, which we know are radically different from how they were a year ago. Okay. So it sounds like the key thing that you want to know about is making sure that traffic is studied very closely, and we'll be doing that as we start the process. We have not yet gone out and done any traffic analysis, but that will be starting, as Carol mentioned, in the first phase. All right, so at this point, I want to turn things over to our Q&A session. It's 6:36 now. We've got until 7:30 tonight. And so we'll be answering, I've got a few slides just to close out the discussion about next steps. But for the next 30 or 40 minutes, we'll be able to get to our Q&A. And so there may be some in the Q&A box that we can get to. So at this point, if Ryan's available, maybe you can let me know which ones are available to answer.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you sounded great.
All right. We have one here. Did you measure the road car load before and after the change of Pruneridge, after the last change between Pomeroy and Lawrence? How was the change? I think we touch on this later, but we can give a quick answer right now.
Yeah, I can take that one. It was studied, and there was a pre and post study that went into that. That is available on the city's website. We can link to it. If it's not available here, we can follow up with that study. It looked at it pretty comprehensively in terms of congestion, safety, and what it did for bicycle ridership. I don't have all the statistics here available, but we'll be able to follow up with the person that answered that question. Any other Q&As from the chat window that we should answer now, or should we go and open it up for people to provide their feedback?
We're typing away here, so I'm trying to see which ones are open. Why don't we open it up?
Okay, great. So Robert, at this point, would you allow people to raise their hands? And again, if you'd like the opportunity to speak, to ask a question or provide a comment, we'll be doing that now. Okay. Great. We're gonna start with George. And then after that, we'll go to Vivek. So George, I'm gonna, let's see. I think our Alta IT, can you unmute George, please, so that you can speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, George, welcome. Yeah, thanks for being here. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. First of all, I reside in between Kylie and San Tomas. And one of the things pre-COVID is we had certain times of the day when you knew not to get onto Pruneridge, which was either prior to about 7:30, 7:45, you wanted to, especially if you, like my son who needed to get to Midi High School, he knew he needed to get there to make the left turn on to Lawrence to get to Midi. Likewise, if you needed to get on to San Tomas, you really needed to get there pre-COVID between 7:45 or so. So my question is, are you going to study this pre-COVID? Is that the plan, or go back and look at studies? Because we have had a decrease in traffic since COVID started. So one of the questions that I would like to know is if you're going to go back and look at those studies pre-COVID.
That's a great question. The answer is yes. The city has a number of historical counts looking at traffic volumes on the corridor at peak times during the morning rush and the afternoon evening rush. From very recent, in the last 1 or 2 years before COVID, we're going to take counts at 24 different locations in the neighborhood and compare those. And we know that they're going to be lower. So we're not just going to say, hey, the traffic is fine now and during COVID, so we can move forward with any design we wish. No, it's not going to happen that way. We're going to adjust based off of those historical counts and create a factor to then say, if COVID were to go away and volumes were return, what should those new numbers adjust to? And so we'll be putting that together, and that'll be shared as part of the study. And so we're trying to do the best we can with our current situation, but base it off of some historical numbers that we know are there. Will also be important to get community feedback like that, what you just said, George, about where you saw certain issues come up. And so thank you for sharing that comment, and please send us an email if you've got finer points to talk about congestion that you witnessed. Okay, next. Thanks, George. Next is Vivek.
Hi.
Hi, Vivek.
I have actually made a presentation to the City Council and the Mayor regarding the situation on Pruneridge. I live right on the intersection of Pruneridge and Cronin. So that light that you talked about has been beneficial to me. The question I had raised back then in front of the City Council also, and it remains unanswered, is do you consider this a residential corridor or a commercial corridor? I consider it residential because there is between San Tomas and Lawrence, there is not a single commercial enterprise. There is actually a school and a park. How would you go about this aspect of this design?
That's a great question. I know in the hierarchy of different roads, all the way from expressways and highways down to local streets, Pruneridge is considered a minor arterial. And so the idea is that it is out there to move traffic, but it's located in what the land uses look at are mostly residential. Single family homes dominate most of the corridor. There are also obviously the golf course, Lucky's, grocery store, shopping areas. So it provides a lot of different services, but I think we're going to be looking at how does the street serve all these different land uses, with the majority of them being residential. If I didn't answer your question, Vivek, send us an email and see if you can clarify more. All right, let's go next to Eric Linskog. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, hi, my name is Eric Linskog. I live in Cupertino and I work in San Jose. I used to work by the airport in San Jose, and then I would daily travel along Pruneridge. And there are not really any bicycle lanes there, so I was fine with it. But I wonder, do you know how many people, in general in the community and in the city and maybe in neighboring cities also, choose not to bike on Pruneridge because they don't feel safe? And if you don't, is that something you will study?
It's something we don't know, but it's purpose of this study, I think, is to get that information. It's part of the survey, and maybe Ben or Robert could send that link out to our survey. There's a specific survey link. We hope that you were able to take it. It asks a lot of questions about transportation choices, the options you have, and why you do not, walk, bike, drive, take transit. It asks a lot of different questions about that. Scooter, skateboard are all out there. It's part of the study, Eric, to figure out if something was provided here, would it benefit folks or not? And so we're trying to get as much input about that as we can. Thanks for the comment. John M., you're next. Go ahead, John M. Oh, can we unmute John M. here?
He is unmuted.
Okay. John, are you having issues with your mic?
How about now?
You're fine. We hear you. Thanks, John.
Can you give us some history about the 2012 road diet on Pruneridge, particularly what instigated it, who made the decision, how much it cost, and maybe even more importantly, what do the residents in that section of Pruneridge think of the change?
It's a great question. We have the study that was out. I can throw this over to city staff who may know more about it. It will be important to get back to that history and maybe talk to or interview some of the residents that were there, and so they could maybe get a comparison between the pre and after and see what they think of it as well. That'd be good information for us to bring possibly at the next community meeting that we have, some of that history of the project. So I don't know if Carol or Mike or Jonathan want to speak to that history.
Yes, I can give you as much history as I know myself, but it seems that project was started back in 2010, and it was part of the on-street portion of the San Tomas Aquino Trail. And so that's why they decided to look at that section of the roadway there. And it eventually got built as with our pavement project. So they striped in that bicycle lane when we repaved that section of the roadway. but there was a traffic consultant that was hired that actually did analysis just like we're doing today, looking at level service delays, travel time delays. And so ultimately it was decided that they were going to put in a bike lane there with the pavement project. But many options were analyzed and a traffic analysis was done to decide which was the preferred option to go with.
Thanks, Carol. And as I mentioned before, we can get more information on that at the next community workshop. All right, next up, Mikhail H.
Yes, hi. I am a Willow Glen resident, and I have been commuting by bicycle to a lot of places for the last 15 years in San Jose and Santa Clara. And I've used a lot of streets, but Pruneridge would probably be the one which I would not use no matter what, because it was kind of suicidal, right? And first of all, I really hope to answer, like Eric asked the question, do people feel safe? At least I can answer that no, for sure. And it's not only because of the speed of traffic, and I really hope we can get a separated bike lane there. But I think one thing in particular is the bike lane intersections, right? So in particular with the San Tomas, there's a bike lane which goes and then it just disappears, and it's supposed to teleport over the San Tomas and then somehow resume biking after that. So my particular question is, are you going to have a final review of details of layout after the project is planned?
Could you explain, what do you mean final review of details?
Well,
go more into that.
Final details of a review of how the traffic lanes are laid out and how the bicycle lanes are marked and laid out.
Yes, that's part of what we'll be presenting. Will be some roadway design concept plans. And so that will look at different options for how the striping of the street could look, what could be preserved, what could be amplified, crossings. This plan is going to look at all different transportation options on Pruneridge Avenue. And then it'll bring that back to the public to get feedback on a couple of different options before presenting those to council. And then council will make a decision about which, if any, move forward to go after funding for next steps. Susan H., you're next.
Hello.
Hi, Susan.
Yes, I live just off of Cronin and Pruneridge, and we have lived here since 1996. So we've been here since before the change, during the change, and after the change. And what I can tell you is that at the heaviest traffic point after the change, yes, there were commuter bikes. So those were really serious bicyclists that I would see on the street. But also traffic during commute times started backing way up after the change. I'm retired now, but I did commute to Mountain View for a long, long time. And it got to be so that during those time periods, instead of going to Pruneridge, which would have been the simplest option if the roads were clear, I started going down Forbes and up Pomeroy, and sometimes I'd go over to Lawrence, and sometimes I'd just keep going through the neighborhoods because that was easier. So how are you going to figure out during this COVID period what commuter travelers actually would do if you narrowed Pruneridge?
A great question, Susan. So we're taking 25 different counts at intersections along Pruneridge and in the neighboring areas. And that will let us know currently today what traffic is doing, but we know that that's not going to reflect the reality pre-COVID or post-COVID. So we're creating an adjustment factor based off of historical counts or historical information that we have about congestion in the neighborhood and along the corridor. And so if it was 10 vehicles, we'll just use a number, 10 vehicles a minute in pre-COVID time, but we only measured 4 today, we know that there's a difference of 6, right? And so that's our adjustment factor. We say whatever we have, we're going to increase our numbers by 6. And so whatever it is across the quarter, we'll be able to get that. Hopefully that'll give us a good snapshot or as close approximation as we can for what we anticipate will be a return to traffic volumes whenever we get through this pandemic. It's not a perfect strategy, but I think it's going to be a good one to show at least some information about the models. We have some pretty sophisticated software as well that's going to model the different options. Today, congestion moving through the corridor, pre-COVID, along with what our options would do. What would those impacts be? Is it going to add, if this road diet goes through, is this going to add 2 seconds to your travel time, 2 minutes to your travel time, an hour to your travel time? It'll go through all of that and tell that information for us to bring back to the community. So that'll be part of the study. Vikas G, you're next. And I hope I apologize if I've mispronounced your name.
What was that name again, Jeff?
Vikas, V-I-K-A-S.
Thanks, Jeff. You asked about community input, so I'll give you a few pointers. I've lived in the area for, I don't know, 20 years. And I live close to Woodhams and Pruneridge. So first off, my pointer is that I've seen a fair number of collisions at the intersection of Woodhams and Pruneridge. And I believe often this is because there's no left turn lane. And then, there are people that are just rushing through at 45 or I don't know, maybe even higher speeds and not bothering to stop for reds. So that's my first observation. The second observation is, there's a crosswalk right in front of the Forest Park Cabana Club on Pruneridge. And nobody really cares to stop for anybody wanting to cross that, use that crosswalk. And so, we're not talking about solutions here, but obviously some kind of a pedestrian light would help there. Thirdly, the left turns, I would commute down Pruneridge and then up St. Thomas. The left turn from Pruneridge onto St. Thomas is timed very poorly. I'm talking about pre-COVID. I don't know what it is right now, but pre-COVID, it would allow like 2 cars, and then the third and the fourth car would try to run through the yellow, and that's it. And this is during commute hours, right? So it was ridiculous. I know your study is does not include this section. The left turn from Pruneridge onto Lawrence South. I believe Susan was mentioning this. That is a horrible, and that happened after the changes. And I understand and appreciate a lot of why those changes were made. But the traffic would back up all the way from there and frequently all the way to Woodhams. And, and of course, at the time, the Cronin light wasn't there. So that was also a problem. And then people would, so there are 2 left turn lanes, but the left turn lanes from Pruneridge onto Lawrence South are so short, and the light is fairly long, and people are restless. So people would cross over the double yellow line and try to get into the leftmost left turn lane. And that's just a total traffic hazard. And one of the things I'd always thought is, why doesn't the city put some kind of barrier at least? If you just stand there and watch any given day, not now, pre-COVID, you will observe people doing that all the time.
Great. Thank you for that.
Sorry,
feedback.
I don't want to take too much time. Just one other thing so my question, I've seen what looks like cameras or some kind of equipment around intersections in the neighborhood. Are these cameras, and is that for the study? And I understand you said there's, you've got software models and complex things. I'm just wondering if the study could be postponed to a time when you would actually get real data versus trying to extrapolate, which I'm very skeptical about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback, the context, and your question. I'm not sure if our count vendors are out yet, but they will be probably this the next couple of weeks. So it could very well be, or it could be for another project. Asking if we can delay. I can let Carol jump in here as well, but as I understand it, there's just an issue with the grant funding. A good chunk of this study is being funded not by city taxpayer dollars, but by a grant source through Caltrans, and that has some really strict timelines that force it to move through now. It's already been delayed. City Council pushed it back 6 to 8 months to get, to try and see if we could get through more of the COVID and get more real-time information. But I'm not sure. Carol, do you want to jump in there and talk about schedule?
Sure. Yes. Jeff is correct. We're really moving forward on this project because we have received grant funding from Caltrans, which if we don't use this funding, we'll lose the funding that we received. And like Jeff said, actually council had, when it was originally coming to council for award a contract for Alta Planning, council actually asked us to come back with a revised schedule and how were we going to deal with outreach opportunities during this time of COVID. So we were very careful in working with Alta Planning and developing an outreach plan and schedule so that even though we're in COVID, we can still reach everyone. And I'm not sure if you live on Pruneridge, but one of the things we did do was, we sent out postcards to folks that lived a little bit more than a half mile along the study corridor. And then in terms of if you've seen like cameras out, I actually went and did a field visit earlier this week, and it seems like the traffic counters are out there. We hired traffic counters. So if you see tubes along the roadways, they're measuring the daily amount of traffic that goes along those roadways. And then if you see cameras at the intersections, they are collecting vehicle counts at those intersections.
Great. Thanks, Carol. There's been a lot of good questions coming up in our Q&A chat window. Some of them are being answered in real time. There might be some that I'd like to have Jonathan Yee, who's here with us. Jonathan, do you want to answer a few of those? And then we'll get back to the folks that have got their hands up.
Yeah, sure. I can answer a few that I see in front of me. Can everyone hear me right now?
Yep, I hear you.
Sure. I'm just going to go through the list. One question is from Atisha Varshni, asking, in your understanding, will reducing one lane of traffic increase or decrease congestion? And I think I can't provide that answer because that's the entire purpose of this project is that we want to collect data, model the conditions of various options, which may include reducing one travel lane, and compare the outcome to try to answer that, to see if it will increase or decrease congestion. There was another question about why can't the process move more quickly than 2 years? Carol had just answered that question. That was because of the grant deadline associated with the funding that we obtained from Caltrans.
Jonathan, I got another one here. If you'd like to answer,
Sure.
Why did Caltrans request this study?
Yeah, sure. So I can answer that. So actually, that wasn't a request specifically from Caltrans. It's a Caltrans grant, but the city applied for the grant. The grant is state funded. It's meant specifically to study corridors throughout the state, and so the city applied for the grant using Pruneridge because Pruneridge was identified in the bicycle master plan as a potential corridor for bicycle lanes, but that plan did identify that further study was needed, and so the city staff took those results to apply for the grant from Caltrans. So the city actually requested that grant. I'm still going through some questions here. Sorry. There's a question about, it's from an anonymous attendee. The question is, how much influence does the street design on the sections east of Pomeroy, I guess it's on either side of this section. So west of Pomeroy and east of Heading. So how much influence does that have on the final design of this section that we're studying this project? I would say we're taking a very neutral view where we're not really considering what's around the corridor. We're trying to implement a complete streets improvement to the corridor. So part of that is looking at various things to improve safety for bicycles, pedestrians, and motorists, and to make the corridor safer and more convenient for all. So the existing design on either side, we're not technically looking at those. We're mainly looking at data such as collisions and counts, and looking at various alternatives to see what this section can be.
Jonathan, why don't you take one more and then we'll get back to the folks that have got their hands raised.
Sure. There's one question from Betsy Megas. It's, are we still measuring level of service? What are we using it for? Is any part of this exercise to reduce vehicle miles traveled? And so I would say, yes, we are still measuring level of service, specifically using it to look at the delays of users on the roadway. And we're using that to compare the delays of alternatives, such as if removing a travel lane would increase delay, the level of service grade would tell us that. And so for the public that don't know what level of service is, that's a terminology used in the traffic industry where letters and grades are assigned to a street. So for example, if you wait at a light for 10 seconds, the grade could be an A. But if you wait at a light for over a minute, the grade could be an F, for example. And so that's what we're measuring, those grades, to see if the delays will increase or decrease depending on what options we're potentially looking at for the corridor.
And is any part of it exercise to reduce vehicle miles traveled?
I would say the main purpose of the project is only to look at enhancing the corridor with the complete streets view. I would say if we did reduce vehicle miles traveled, that would only be a side benefit, but that's not a primary objective of this project.
Great. Thanks for those. And keep the questions coming.
Thanks.
We're going to go to the folks that have got their hands raised again. So the first person I got next up is Matthew G.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead with your comment or question.
Okay, so I'm actually a runner and I absolutely love the streets, Mauricia and Forbes. They are perfect for runners. There's a lot of fellow runners as well. I go from Pomeroy to St. Thomas on both of those. And they are perfect. I mean, one is a bike route. The cars are all friendly neighborhood cars and there's not too many of them and they are very careful. For the past 10 years, I've never had any issues on either one of those, except on the Kylie and Woodhams intersection, where I have to be careful. Now, I love what you're trying to do with Pruneridge, but my biggest concern by far is the impact on Forbes and Mauricia, of course. And one other person already talked about using Forbes as a way to go around traffic. So my question to you is, on the map, you highlight only Pruneridge. Is part of the plan to look at traffic mitigation, further traffic mitigation on Forbes and Mauricia specifically done at the same time as these improvements done on Pruneridge? Or are you looking to suggest only changes on Pruneridge, study the impact around, but not make any changes at the time you make the changes on Pruneridge?
A great question, Matthew. I think that we will be looking at design changes, options on Pruneridge, and the impacts that those options would have on the surrounding streets. And as part of that, what we could do is describe maybe some of the mitigation measures that would need to be included to counteract some of those different trade-offs. I think that would be up to future design phases when we actually get into any engineering work or construction work to really look more closely and comprehensively at additional designs for side streets. It's not particularly the purpose of this plan to design those, but it's something that we do need to be aware of and share that information with council as part of their decision-making process. Let's go to Mike A.
Hi, quick question. The classification of Pruneridge, was that done prior to Apple's 14,200 parking lot structure and capping Pruneridge, or was it just historically classified, as you guys mentioned earlier? And just to reiterate the point that some of our neighbors has, the solution that the commuters are going to use is to go through the neighborhoods. I live off of Pruneridge and right off of Lawrence on Hillsdale, and that is the route that they use to cut around through. So I know that you guys are doing extensive studies, but pre-COVID, all you had to do was drive on Pruneridge at Cronin to see that it goes bumper to bumper from Cronin through Lawrence into the Apple structure. So there's quite a bit of traffic that goes through that thoroughfare, and just expect if it does pass, it's just going to extend that traffic. Thanks.
Thank you for the comment, Mike. The minor arterial classification is just a term that was used. It's part of the general plan for the city, and the general plan, the last version of it might have gone before the Apple Park was in place. So that's something that it's great feedback. What we're hearing is really wonderful to hear, and keep it coming. I think part of us is just understanding what are the residents' vision for this street. Should it serve as an arterial where it's meant to move traffic through the neighborhood, or is it more interested in other different dimensions that could be part of it? So it really is, what is the future of this, or is it to preserve what exists? And that's the information we want to hear. So thank you for that comment. Justin C., you're up.
Yeah, no, I'm also on the corridor of Pruneridge. I'm on the corner of Luther. Just curious, like, with the analysis you've done from Pomeroy to Lawrence Expressway with the road diet and the traffic there, do you expect the same amount of traffic if you do a road diet from, I guess, Woodhams to San Tomas?
No way of really knowing that until we get the studies, the data pulled together. We can look at what historically has happened. I know from other road diets, they all take on a different flavor. And so that's why we're not just using one number to make a decision about a road diet. There's a rule of thumb that says if you've got a road that's got 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and it has around 20,000 vehicles per day or less, it's a good candidate. It's a potential candidate for taking away one of those travel lanes, converting it to a center turn lane, and creating a 4-to-3 road diet. That's, for the most part, and national studies have said and shown that it pretty much moves the same amount of traffic. But we're not stopping there. That's why we're really looking at the detail of those intersections to say, all right, that's great. That's a good starting point. But what is this really going to mean in terms of to the second levels of delay along this corridor and in the neighborhood? Great question. Deborah Tudor, you're next.
Hi, you started off saying that this is not a dad project, right? Where you've already decided and now you're going to announce. But on the other hand, one of the early slides said that this whole project is being done under the framework of complete streets, where the goal seems to be predetermined, that we're trying to bring all the different types of traffic onto the same street. Why is that the goal, rather than saying the goal is to move cars efficiently from one area to another area, and to move bicycles efficiently from one area to another area? Because when you frame it more broadly like that, you might find out that the best way to do that most efficiently and most safely is to have bicycles travel along a different corridor, like maybe Forbes Avenue, and cars travel along Pruneridge. So why is it pre-decided that the goal is to bring all the kinds of traffic together onto the same street?
A great comment, and maybe it was just my fault for confusing the folks with that. I think that nothing's been decided about the design of this. The approach of using a complete streets approach is just one that it's a city policy, and so that really does look at evaluating all different options on the roadways. And so it very well could be, once this plan moves through, what you said, Deborah, that there could be options for bicycles elsewhere, and that there's improvements that can be made for traffic here. There could be discussion about transit, about bus lines working with VTA. There could be just improvements for pedestrians, about better crossings as part of the study. Nothing has been predetermined about what this is going to look like as the outcome, but a really good point taken, and we'll try and clarify that in the next time we speak. George G., you're next.
I think my question might go to city staff. As a current City of Santa Clara Parks and Rec Commissioner, I know that when we go out and try to look for grants for our parks to improve our parks, there are requirements that are put in to those grants. So one question that I have is to city staff, does this follow a similar pattern, meaning in order to get the grant funding, we have to improve, one of the requirements might be we have to improve bicycle lanes. Is that a requirement in order to get the grant funding? And then secondly, somebody else had stated about the intersections on Lawrence and San Tomas. And I can tell you that even though we currently we only have 2 lanes both ways to get to San Tomas, people who need during the rush hour pre-COVID, or even today, form 3 lanes if you're going to make the right turn onto San Tomas. So you have the 2 lanes that we already have in place, and then people slide down next to the, to form a 3rd lane to get on to San Tomas. So if you take that down to just 1 lane in both directions, I can see pre-COVID where you could have at certain times of the day, you could be backed up from San Tomas to Lawrence Expressway. I don't think that's going outside the norm, that if you hit it at certain points of the day, say maybe in the evening about 5:36 or in the morning on Lawrence Expressway between 7:30 and 8, you could literally be backed up from San Tomas to Lawrence if you decide to kind of go down from 4 lanes down to 1 in each direction.
Thanks for the comment, George. Does city staff want to respond to that?
Sure, I will. So George, your first question was, is it a requirement by the grant that we would have to add bike lanes? And the answer is no. The requirement of the grant is just to develop the plan. So the plan will include options as to how to include bike lanes, but the grant does not require us to actually implement the bike lanes. The requirement is just to create the plan.
Great. Atisha V., you're up.
Hey, this is Atisha Vashne, and just a quick introduction. I'm a member of BPAC, so Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission for City of Santa Clara, but my comments are on my own. I'm also a design consultant and urban designer, live in North Santa Clara. My comment to rest of my community members is, like, as we are thinking of this plan, let's think of our future, like what kind of future we want to live in. Do we want to live in a car-oriented future, or do we want to live in a people-oriented future? And like, let's talk about moving people versus moving cars. I know cars is a big necessity, but is that a greener, sustainable future we want for ourselves? And my few other questions are, and this is more like suggestions to, like, Pruneridge is a major connector for connecting people between Cupertino to San Jose downtown. And we need to be, I would say, good community members to our neighbors and see that how this corridor fits into the larger vision, especially in San Jose downtown when we are getting BART and when we are getting so much transit. Like, is that something we want to leverage for our city? Because it's a big economic benefit for South Santa Clara that we are getting all that transit within a few miles from us, and people can easily bike to that transit. So how we are planning to access that, national level, federal level infrastructure that we are getting in our backyard. So these are just some of my questions. And I feel like at some point we need to move our mathematics to how many people we are moving versus how many cars we are moving. And if this process can educate the people, the community on how those metrics happen, that will be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the comment. I'm looking at the clock at 7:20 now. We're going to take one more question from the audience, but I'd say if you didn't have a chance to have your comment spoken tonight, please send us an email. In the chat window right now, our staff are going to send you the different ways that you can engage with us. Again, it's the website URL. That's going to list all the different ways, upcoming events. It also has the link to the survey. That survey is also there in the chat window. We have a voicemail message set up. So if you don't want to engage online, you can call and leave your messages that way. And then finally, there's an email address. So with that, please engage with us. Everybody who signed up for tonight, we also have your email address. We'll let you know about upcoming events. We'll be posting a recording of this to the website, along with frequently asked questions and answers to your questions here. So please don't let this be your only opportunity to engage with us. If you want to reiterate what you said or clarify, go online, leave us a voicemail message, send us an email. We're really excited to engage with all of you and excited about the participation tonight. So the last person that we're going to hear from before I have a few closing slides will be Jim H. Go ahead, Jim.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Jim. Go ahead.
My comment is,
Jim, I'm having a little, it sounds like you're a little bit far from your mic. Can you speak up?
I'm retired now. I lived this whole Cupertino since 1977.
Jim, I apologize. It's not coming through.
I don't know what to do.
Apologies, Jim. The mic is just not working for us tonight. Hopefully you can use the Q&A window and provide your feedback or comments that way, and we'll be able to follow up with you. Apologies for that technology. Let's do one more for somebody that we haven't heard from tonight. So let's go to John N.
Hello?
John, go ahead.
Oh, yes, I have two comments here. One is the house around the Pruneridge is kind of large. So there are more than 4 residents for a lot of houses. So they have like at least 3 or 4 cars. So hopefully the on-street parking still remains, because there's no way you can park your car anywhere. You cannot park at the roof. So this is one question. Another one is the regarding the bus. I believe there are bus stops and around. So it seems adequate right now for people using the transportation. So I'm kind of against making extra bus routes on the Pruneridge Street, so that creates more noise and also traffic as well. That's my comments. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. All right, I've got a few more slides just to walk through the next steps.
Hey, Jeff, can I
Carol.
just answer one more question?
Go ahead, Carol.
So there have been some questions in the Q&A about, can we extend the grant deadline to a time after COVID has ended? And so I just want to let everyone know that we indeed did talk to Caltrans to see if we could extend the grant deadline. And actually, they only gave us an extra additional month to complete the study, even though we asked several times if we can wait and hold the grant funds until after COVID was pretty much over. But unfortunately, they only allowed us 1 additional month. So we decided to move forward versus losing our grant funds. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, Carol. Okay. I want to talk about some next steps. So this winter and spring, we'll be conducting that corridor traffic analysis, looking at intersection, delay, parking, looking at all the congestion. Conceptual design options will be coming in the spring and summer. So based off of your input through the meeting that we had tonight, we're also having a follow-up meeting on Saturday in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. So let your friends, your family, your coworkers know, your neighbors. If they weren't able to make tonight, we're going to have a repeat. So it's the same content, but available Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. We're going to bring back conceptual design options for your input back in the spring, summer. An upcoming event that I want to make people aware of is the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We have a member here that was here tonight. BPAC has a meeting March 22nd at 4 o'clock. These meetings are always open to the public if you'd like to attend. We'll be going through very similar content tonight with the BPAC, and this is an appointed advisory committee that reports to City Council, and this is going to be one of our main stakeholder bodies as part of this process. I have a link here to their website, and that will give you information about how to sign up and join virtually. That'll also be on our website soon. A schedule, just remind folks that we are here, the first community workshop at the very beginning. We'll be going through summer or fall, we'll have a community workshop. And then we'll come back in the spring for that third community workshop to review the public draft plan before it goes to City Council for their consideration. As a reminder, we want to hear from you. So please take the survey, santaclaraca.gov/Pruneridge Ave plan. Send us an email at pruneridgeaveplan@altago.com. You can call and leave a voice message at 408-320-7060 and attend our future meetings. So I want to leave some time available. There are 3 questions now open on PollEverywhere. So if you still got it open, remember it's pollev.com/altplanning107. We want to improve this experience for you. So if there's suggestions for future meetings to make them more productive, email us at pruneridgeaveplan@altago. And please take some time to answer those exit poll questions. That will really help us make sure that we're serving you. And that's the whole purpose of this plan, that we come together with a vision that works for the majority of the people that are using and benefiting from this corridor. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. I know you have very busy lives that we all lead, and taking 90 minutes out of your day to be with us is very much appreciated. So we look forward to working with you. With that, I'll turn it over, Carol, if there's any other follow-up questions. Otherwise, we'll let people get on with their evenings and say thank you.
Nope, I think that's it for tonight. And once again, thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy day to be with us.
Thanks, everybody. Once you've finished your 3 questions that are now live on PollEverywhere, we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Great job, Carol and Jeff, Jonathan, for being the face of the presentation.
Ryan, will you
there.
stop, please? Stop speaking, please. Robert, are all of our attendees left the meeting?
I'm still seeing a Greg Okada under attendees.
Okay, please remove Greg Okada.
I pushed them to yeah, it looks like Jeff, it looks bugged. Google can't get them out.
Okay. I'd like to do a debrief with folks. Could you please stop recording?